We have video of him. He's a fifth-generation Texan. He is the president and CEO of Empower Texans. Michael, welcome to Conduit News Radio. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, Paul. Great. Thanks. I appreciate the chance to be with you today.
There we go. Hang on one second. I think we're having trouble getting you, Michael. Can you hear us?
I can hear you just fine.
There we go. We have you. We have you on the program now. All right. So it says here I'm reading from Empower Texans website. The Fort Worth Star Telegram said Sullivan slays taxpayer dragons in Austin. When the heat is on in Austin, Michael Quinn Sullivan knows how to make it even hotter. Texas Monthly dubbed him the enforcer on their list of the 25 most influential Texans. The Dallas Morning News has called him the state's most influential unelected Republican. How do you respond to that? Those are very big compliments, in my opinion, sir.
They're either compliments or they're kind of the old saying, those whom the gods seek to destroy, they first praise. I think that it's always nice when your enemies want to talk about how powerful you are. What I tell my staff is, when people are complaining that we're too big, too powerful, just shut up and let them finish speaking. Is kind of our approach.
Yeah, I think that's a really good. Can you tell us a little bit about your organization, Empower Texans, and what you guys hope to accomplish? I see some great things here. On the About page, the greatest threat to our state's economic growth and competitiveness is the weight of government on the economy. I completely agree.
Yeah, so our organization takes the tact that most of government is improved when we have more people involved and more people engaged. And unfortunately, a whole lot of our modern system of government, listening to the intro a second ago with Ronald Reagan talking about having a place for self-governance, that's absolutely true. The United States, the state of Texas, the state of Arkansas, we were all designed to be these laboratories of experimentation on the simple question, can people govern themselves and not by some distant ruler, as Reagan put it? That remains to be as true today as it was in the 1980s, as in the 1780s. And at Empower Texans, we seek to try to amplify that, to make that more real. Whether you're talking about cronyism, where it's a very small number of legislators and bureaucrats who decide what rich corporation from somewhere else is going to get your money. That doesn't happen when you have a lot of people watching. Those kind of decisions only happen in the back rooms. You just go down the line of all the decisions, all the bad decisions that are made in government. Those get improved when you have more citizens involved in paying attention. So that's what we try to do. We try to give citizens more opportunities to see what their government is doing and to participate in government at the federal level a little bit, but much more importantly at those levels of government that are more impactful to citizens, which is at the state and the local level. As conservatives, I get so frustrated when I know that most of my conservative friends can tell you the names of prime ministers of countries that I couldn't find on a map if you paid me, but yet they don't know who their city council members are, their school board members are, their county sheriff, and those are people who can really impact your life. We need to be bringing our principles to bear at all levels of government, not just the sexy ones that get you on Fox News.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We're talking with Michael Quinn Sullivan. The organization is Empower Texans. You can go to empowertexans.com and find out more about this great organization. This is kind of part of a series, Michael. We've talked to people who run organizations in Pennsylvania, in Virginia, and now we're looking at Texas. And we're trying to do this as a way to encourage the grassroots activists here in Arkansas, because we are a big government state, even though we
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. We've got a good show for you today. On this Thursday. Thanks for starting the beginning of your day with us here. It's the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine, and we want you to help us do that. Call or text if you want to help us in that way. Let us know how we're doing, bad or worse, or great. Number 870-275-9799. Also, over at Facebook.com/Conduit News, YouTube, ConduitNews.com. I mean, you guys, we're just trying to put as many, doing as many platforms as we can. Actually, there's a few more that we could be doing if we want to. Really appreciate the feedback and participation. Coming up at the, let's see, I want to talk about governing by task forces coming up to 6:30 today. I'm going to go over at 7, okay, it's 7:05. We're going to go over and be an in-depth look at the Hank Wilkins, former state representative Hank Wilkins' guilty plea, because we haven't actually done that in great detail. When the news broke that he, when he pled guilty, and then the Arkansas Times revealed that Senator A in that plea is Senator Jeremy Hutchinson. We didn't really. It was in the middle of the primary season and everything else, and so I didn't actually dive into it for you, and I'm going to do that today at 7. And then at 7:33, we've got a Conservative Future segment. I want to introduce you to Alice Norman, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her and how she's a young conservative, and that's always fun. So we got a good show for you. I'm going to start this segment. I want to go over something that Senator Trent Garner wrote in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette back on the 28th, and I have to say, this is one of the key dividing points going forward. There's going to be a lot of people on one side and a lot of people on the other side of this tort reform issue, what I call and have called the bad tort reform, because I believe it goes way too far. I don't think this is about what people say it's about. I think it's blurring the lines of separation of powers between the equal and separate branches of government. I know the special interests at the Marble Palace. I know how it works. I know those people down there will try to control the rules of evidence based on special interests and the people paying them to do so. I know it's going to happen. They're going to slip something in a bill. They're going to tell a jury what they can and can't consider to help out a nursing home owner. That's what's going to happen. This whole bill was written for the nursing home community. Now, aside from the fact that it puts a cap on human life, aside from the fact this is going to enable nursing home owners to not have to worry about, let's say, certain lawsuits or the potential of bad care for the elderly. And I find it interesting. The pro-tort reform crowd they're taking our arguments against and saying, no, if you vote for tort reform, it's going to do if you vote for tort reform, they're now saying that's pro-life. Even though you have leading pro-life advocates and organizations now saying, listen, we are pro-life from moment of conception until natural death. And so they're trying to stand up for people who are more at the end of their lives. Well, what is the pro-tort reform people doing? This bad tort reform on the amendment on the ballot coming up this November? They're now saying, no, we're actually pro-life. And it is an amazing. The Senator Trent Gardner wrote an op-ed to the Democrat Gazette for tort reform, explaining his arguments. And in many of these cases, he's first of all, he's promising the moon. Basically, this is going to create jobs. This is going to make your health care better. It's pretty amazing. It also is kind of all over the place, But so I'm gonna go through this, and we're gonna kind of hit some of the high points here. So Senator Trent Gardner writes to the Gazette that there's no other proposal that has the potential to help Arkansas more than Issue 1, the proposed constitutional amendment for tort reform. Your vote this November can grow jobs, improve access to quality, affordable health care, strengthen protection of our most vulnerable citizens. Now, let's take that one right there. The pro-life organizations and advocates say that that's not the case. They say that it's not going to protect vulnerable citizens. As a matter of fact, the family counsel's Jerry Cox had to stop an amendment that was being slid in under the during the special session that they had, that was going to allow nursing home owners in the contract that their residents sign that they would be waiving their right to trial by jury. Which, by the way, that's another thing that we haven't talked about, because a lot of critics of this bad tort reform in November, they don't want the right to trial by jury to be diminished. I just find it, how I've been saying, the biggest problem between the Republican Party in Arkansas right now is we can't agree on the definitions of words and phrases. It's very frustrating when you have one side of the issue saying this is what it'll do, okay? It's going to weaken, right? Weaken the protections for the elderly. And then you have people who are for it, like Trent Gardner, who says, no, it's going to strengthen. How? Why? Just somebody tell me why we have such completely different views. We have people saying the complete opposite of what it's going to do. Anytime that happens in such a stark a way, please don't think that, well, maybe it's a middle ground. No. I feel like there is a right and wrong answer here. Somebody's right and somebody's wrong. I don't think it's me. I'm sure Senator Gardner doesn't think it's him. So, the people are going to decide. We're going to vote on this thing. Nursing home lobbyist gave Jake Files $80,000 after or about the time he tried to get a similar piece of legislation filed and voted on. You have Judge Mike Maggio. I'm sorry. Yeah, is that who it is? Yeah. Maggio. You have Judge Maggio, who pled guilty or said he accepted a bribe for $10,000 to lower a nursing home judgment for a nursing home owner from $5 million down to, $2 million or whatever it was. Only in Arkansas do you have that display of public corruption, and you go ahead and you give the nursing home owners and the nursing home industry what they want. This is not a tort reform bill for everybody. This is a tort reform bill for one industry, and that's the nursing home industry. That's what this is. And I'm going to do my best every chance I get on the platforms that we have to educate the people of Arkansas about what this is and what this is not. But trust me, this has absolutely nothing to do with protection of our most vulnerable citizens, the elderly. That is not what Issue 1 will do if passed. And to be advocating for this and ignoring what has happened in Arkansas over the last couple of years and what we know about a judge saying he took a bribe to lower a nursing home judgment, and then you're going to go ahead and get and vote for exactly what the nursing home owners want? Something is strange about that. Something doesn't make any sense. It's like, well, that was just an isolated incident. Was it? Was it an isolated incident when David Norsworthy gave Jake Files $80,000? Nursing home lobbyist that replaced Michael Morton on that was appointed by the governor there after Michael Morton was involved, or he's never been charged with anything. We all know that, but nursing home owner Michael Morton was involved, and that was his nursing home where the judgment got lowered, and the judge said, Maggio said, I got paid $10,000 in order to lower the judgment. I mean, are they just isolated incidents? No. And you know as well as I do, if they can give somebody $80,000 for filing or passing a bill, then they'll give them another $80,000 to set the rules of evidence when you've got a class action lawsuit or whatever, and you got some guy who's in a tough spot and say, well, I don't want the jury to be able to consider this piece of evidence. It happens all the time. We'll just pass a law to say that this particular piece of evidence is hearsay, which is, illegal. That's hearsay. You can't. That's inadmissible. The jury can't consider this. It's hearsay. That's exactly what they'll do. Because I know those people down there. So, protection of the most vulnerable. I mean, I can't even get through this whole thing. I can't even get through it. I can't get past the second paragraph of this op-ed by Senator Trent Garner in support of Issue 1. Let's go to paragraph 3. He claims that support for Issue 1 is backed by hardworking Arkansans. Business owners and job creators, nursing home owners, physicians and healthcare advocates. Well, I do know Dr. Cole Peck was a supporter of it. He lost his election. Civic leaders. Well, I mean, if the chamber supports it, I'm going to have pause for sure. And elected officials at state and local levels. Well, certainly elected officials support it because we have to vote on it now. And we're now in this educational campaign where you have the lawmakers saying one thing, I'm obviously saying something different. I disagree on this particular issue with Senator Trent Gardner. I don't want to say Senator Trent Gardner is a very nice person, and we've had disagreements before, and he's always very congenial, if you see him. I mean, he's a really nice guy. I just really disagree here. And I get frustrated when, again, you have one side that says things like, this is going to hurt the elderly and our most vulnerable, and then the other side just takes the opposite and says, no, this is going to help them. That's very frustrating with me, to me. Issue 1 is our opportunity to enact meaningful tort reform. Once passed, it becomes a permanent part of our Constitution to protect us from activist judges. Now, Senator Trent Gardner does not like activist judges and has a big thing against this Wendell Griffin. Understandably so. Matter of fact, a lot of people are speculating when, in January 2019, there's going to be some impeachment proceedings or, an attempt to go after Wendell Griffin in some way from a legislative standpoint. He goes on, Issue 1 relieves financial burdens from investors and job creators, making Arkansas competitive with neighboring states. Actually, what Arkansas is doing with this version of tort reform, if you go read, there's a document from the Bowen School of Law, UALR. We would be going further, according to that document, we would be going further than any other state goes, according to what I read. And I covered all of this back last year when we were debating whether or not you should vote to put this on the ballot in the first place. It levels the playing field for economic development. So if you vote to put a cap on human life and give the legislature the power to set rules of evidence over a courtroom, it's going to benefit the economy of the state of Arkansas. Just like, by the way, When Governor Hutchinson got the last issue 3 passed that removed the cap on how much debt we could go into as a percentage of our budget, that was going to create jobs. It's always about economic development. It's always about jobs with these people. Anytime they got to get something passed, they just say, oh, this is going to be jobs and economy. Money, money, money. That's what they think about. They want the people. They think it's, they'll vote for it if you just say economic development and more jobs. He writes, when I served in the Army, I went on marches carrying a heavy rucksack. The added weight slowed me down. Other soldiers without rucksacks outpaced me. Right now, Arkansas's economy is weighed down by the burden of the system. Every state bordering Arkansas has tort reform similar to Issue 1. Again, from what I've read, this goes further than the states around us. He says Issue 1 not only affects business. Okay, Issue 1 not only affects business, it's a matter of life and death for people with limited health care access. Here we go. So, passing Issue 1, putting that cap in place, limiting what attorneys can make, giving rules of evidence in a courtroom to the legislature is going to increase your health care access. And he blames trial lawyers for it. He says right now, if you live in a rural area, because of ambulance-chasing lawyers who push the cost of medical malpractice insurance higher, often prevent healthcare professionals from practicing in rural areas. Most attorneys in Arkansas are honest professionals. Now, Senator Carter is an attorney. Unfortunately, because of the unfairness built into our civil justice system, we are targets for predatory lawyers and out-of-state ambulance chasers who only care about themselves. We basically, now listen to this. He knows Arkansas loves jobs in the economy, and Senator Trent Gardner also knows that people don't like taxes. So his next paragraph, he says, we pay a lawsuit tax because of the current system. This lawsuit tax is estimated to cost an average citizen $900 a year. So that's right. If you vote for tort reform, you will pay $900 less a year to the government. So this is what he's saying. He's saying we're paying the cost to the average citizen at the way it currently goes. It's costing us $900 a person. So if you vote for him, you'll get lower taxes. So you'll get they are phrasing Issue 1 like it is some sort of magic pill. Vote for Issue 1, and the elderly get taken care of, which they won't. Your health care gets better, which it won't. And you'll pay less taxes because he phrases it a lawsuit tax. I'm going to wrap this up here in a minute because I want to talk about the pro-life issue because that's the one I feel like that is the most egregious because these legislators are really getting upset that they voted for this thing, and the pro-life movement that believes in life at conception until natural death, that has come out against tort reform, it's really grinding their gears. We'll be back in just a moment.
Conservative legislation killed?
Or do you need policies enacted that ensure government growth?
Then you need to get nephewed.
Hi, I'm nephew number 1 of uncle, nephew, and nephew, attorneys at law. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a senator.
And I'm nephew number 2, and I am a lawyer and also a senator.
Are you the victim of a recent accident in which the voters in your community mistakenly elected a limited government conservative who is now actually implementing the ideas he or she campaigned on?
That's right, nephew number 1. Don't be a victim of democratic elections any longer. At Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew, we are committed to killing limited government legislation and promoting bills that increase the size of government by using any tool at our disposal.
Because sometimes the truth of the matter is, principles get in the way of pragmatism.
Just listen to some of our great testimonials.
Ever since I've been using the nephews, all my special interests have been served. As long as you make sure your contract says lobbying services are prohibited, then the legal services of uncle, nephew, and nephew are legal. Trust me, put the nephews on them.
It came out of nowhere. I was blindsided last election cycle when my well-funded and paid-for politician lost to some grassroots limited government voters. But then I hired the nephews, and they killed all the conservative policies the voters wanted. I got nephewed.
I got nephewed too, and so can you.
Uncle, nephew, and nephew will accept compensation via campaign contributions.
Put the nephews on them.
PHP Parody. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I'm no fan. They can't stand passing ships in the night. It's not that I'm not necessarily a fan or not a fan of trial lawyers. I do know that I'm really getting sick of these legislator attorneys, though. I mean, if I'm going to be perfectly honest with this, I mean, we're going to criticize one type of attorney, but we're not going to criticize the legislator type of attorney that they seem to be able to maneuver very well down at the Marble Palace. That's who I am more focused on right now. You know, the attorneys that actually their actions directly affect me versus other people, trial attorneys who say what you want to about them. They are, out. Whatever they do is not going to affect me in terms of by force of government, and law. We're going over Senator Trent Gardner's op-ed. That is I would just say it's very broad. There apparently are a million great reasons, according to him, to vote for this bad tort reform amendment we will all be voting on this November. And this is what he says. He says, it is troubling to see opponents of Issue 1 hijack the pro-life movement. They're so mad that there are trial attorneys on the same side as the family council. They are very, very upset about this. And it's because they think that the family council and Jerry Cox have lost their mission. But they have no idea. The family councils has been working on issues much broader before they even dreamed about going to the legislature. They write, it's troubling to see the opponents of Issue 1, Trent Gardner writes, hijack the pro-life movement. Instead of focusing on protecting the unborn, some are letting trial lawyers manipulate them. We're all being manipulated by trial lawyers, apparently. If we could just get rid of them, I mean, we'd have jobs and economic development galore. It goes on, the advancements we have made for pro-life causes shouldn't be sold to lawyers who oppose protecting life. Then he goes on to talk about an expectant mother in rural Arkansas and how if you just vote for tort reform, you'll help decrease the infant mortality rate. I'm not making this up. It just goes on and on and on. I just got a text that said Issue 1 limits the fee for the plaintiffs, but it's an unlimited fee for insurance companies. That's right. You've just kind of gone, to the Republican side of things. And I would ask you what I've asked them. What about the backlash that you guys get when you guys try to educate the citizenry about maybe somebody who claims to be a limited government conservative? What kind of backlash can you get when their voting record doesn't match their campaign rhetoric?
Oh, it's glorious when those folks react, because it's never good. I've had private investigators tail my children. We've had death threats. We've had people threaten, calling up donors and threatening them, people, or at least people they think are donors. So these guys all respond the way the emperor responded when the kid said, "Hey, you're not wearing any clothes." But that's the challenge: is finding folks, and I'm very blessed to have a fantastic staff and fantastic donor base who are committed to exposing the delta between what politicians say at home and what they do when they're in office. Ideally, there is no sunlight between what is said and what is done. But unfortunately, and it seems to be particularly on the Republican side, where we see these guys who want to campaign as the second coming of Ronald Reagan, and yet when they get into office, they legislate like Walter Mondale. We have to put a stop to that. It's not fair to the voter. The voters are being lied to, and again, they don't respond well. The elected officials don't respond well. We try to keep things focused entirely on the objective voting record and say, look, here's how they voted. Explain the vote. Well, it's often funny. The politician will turn to, oh, no, don't look at my voting record. Look at the things that I've done. I've coached Little League. I've, mown my lawn nicely, whatever all it might be. They don't want to talk about their voting records, which is what tells us we need to talk a lot more even about their voting records.
No, that's exactly right. We're talking with Michael Quinn Sullivan. Again, it's Empower Texans. Now, he's a former newspaper reporter, and I'd love for you to tell us about your experience and how does that shape what you do in Texas, but also a Capitol Hill staffer, you a think tank vice president, also an Eagle Scout, a graduate from Texas A&M University. And so tell us.
Which may not get me any love in Arkansas, depending on where we are in the calendar.
Yeah, of course not. But still, it is a great university. And so tell us just a little bit about, what you've seen in D.C. And a lot of times what we get here locally is, Arkansas is a small state. We're not like.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So, they're now arguing that issue 1, if you vote for issue 1, it's going to save lives. So not only will it provide protection for our most vulnerable citizens, our elderly, not only will it produce jobs, not only does it have the support of civic leaders, but it will save lives, they're now saying. And they're saying that pro-life organizations opposing issue 1, because they claim now, Senator Trent Gardner says, quote, issue 1 saves lives. There is nothing more pro-life than that. So this is the most interesting thing about their argument. And I'm assuming that Senator Trent Gardner has a lot of his colleagues that support his position, that they have talked about their arguments. So what are they doing? Well, guess what? They know Arkansas is a pro-life state. And if pro-life activists and organizations who are trusted come out against it and say this is not pro-life, do you understand how terrifying that is to Republican senators? It's scary to them. So what must they do? They must come out and steal the other side's argument and claim, no, it's pro-life. Don't listen to the ones who say it's not pro-life. It actually, hey, get this. It actually is pro-life. That's what they're saying. They like to steal the conservative argument here. I'm telling you, it's exactly what they're doing. They don't understand. Like an organization like Family Council, very well respected, can reach out and contact a lot of people. And they don't understand that their stance on life is from the moment of conception till the natural death. And this is about protecting the elderly. And this issue 1 is not about protecting the elderly like they're claiming. They're claiming it protects the elderly. Family Council's saying no, vote against it to protect the elderly. They're doing the same thing. They are stealing the other side's argument here. The other side's criticism, they're saying no. If you do it our way, we'll get those things. They're promising everything under the sun. I find it very interesting, these tactics. We've seen it in elections between political candidates, and now we're seeing it here with issues, right? Now we're seeing it here with these ballot initiatives. It's certainly something to note, but I think this amendment goes too far. It's a bad tort reform amendment. There is good tort reform. I mean, I had Jerry Cox on the program. We were talking about how there are some aspects of tort reform that are good, but this bill is not it. And again, only in Arkansas. I don't see how these people do it. I honestly don't. I don't see how you can have an $80,000 wire transfer from nursing home lobbyists or a nursing home lobbyist to Jake Files after he files a tort reform bill very similar to this one. I don't see how you can have that and we still go forward and do what the nursing home people want. I don't see how you can have in the news a judge admitting he took a bribe to lower a judgment for a nursing home owner who had been, caught in neglect and had injured their patients. And then our legislators, Republican legislators, still go forward and implement the agenda of nursing home owners and put this on the ballot. Only in Arkansas is there some sort of environment that removes the shame from people to where they continue to behave in a certain manner, continue to vote or advocate in a certain manner when the headlines are exposing corruption every day. And you want to complain about trial lawyers? I'd rather just we can have that complaint. I'd rather complain about our dishonest government right now. That's what I'm worried about. I don't even think we can have we can't even discuss the real issue of tort reform in this state, in my opinion, because we don't have an honest government. We have nursing home owners, and it's a lot deeper than that. But we have people, nursing home lobbyists, giving $80,000 to Jake Files. I don't think we can have the policy discussions right now in Arkansas. I really don't. I would love to have the policy discussions in Arkansas about limited government, the pitfalls of big government, the benefits of limited constitutional government. But right now, the way I see it, whether it's the GIF or Medicaid fraud, or in terms of the preferred family health care and how deep that rabbit hole goes, or this whole nursing home thing, we just got to have honest government. Can we have honest government? Can we have that first? That's where I am. But only in Arkansas do you still go ahead and do what the nursing home lobbyists want you to do after the nursing home lobbyists have been outed as giving that money to Jake Files for filing the bill. or and yeah, that's the general consensus when you look at the time, the way the time stamp has was with Jake Files filing the bill again, the $80,000, and that's not just me that's saying this. You've got was it the city's attorney that wrote to the U.S. attorney saying, hey, I know Jake Files pled guilty to these charges with the general improvement funds, but are you taking into consideration that he got that $80,000 from the nursing home lobbyist? Can you give me any information? Of course, the U.S. attorney says, hey, we're still investigating. I mean, who knows what Senator Jake Files did to make that plea. And by the way, speaking of pleas, we're going to be going over Henry Hank Wilkins, the 4th state representative, and his guilty plea. We'll be going over that plea and the different schemes in that plea coming up at 7:05. This is, anyway, this Senator Trent Garner's op-ed. I would expect that this will be revisited at some point. Again, this op-ed is quite all over the place, really. But they want their version of their bad tort reform to pass. That they support it for whatever reason. But you don't really hear anybody else, from what I can tell, pointing these other facts out, that while they put this bad tort reform amendment on the ballot, I don't know if anybody that is pointing out consistently that this is a tort reform amendment that was created and crafted specifically for the nursing home industry. That's what you have to understand. This is specifically for one industry. It's not for everybody. It's not for the business community. It's for one industry. And it's an industry that's been in the headlines. Oh, my goodness. And not to mention the cap on, you said the cap on damages. Joe, you were just saying that we had a person on Facebook that brought to your attention, speaking of this, that there was a Florida law that was found unconstitutional for this very thing, right? Now, I know it's Arkansas and Florida, different states, but it was in the Florida Supreme Court, right?
Yeah, there's a Florida Supreme Court ruling in 4-3, it was last year, that there was a bill that was passed, or a law put into place where you capped punitive damages and medical malpractice suits at $500,000 and $1 million if it was catastrophic in their wording.
Yeah.
And it was repealed. They got rid of it, and that's part of what's in this tort reform.
And who was the governor at the time that all went down?
Well, at the time, it wasn't the person you're thinking of that I told you, but that was the person who supported it originally.
Who supported it originally?
Jeb Bush back in 2003 pushed for this bill.
Okay, yeah.
That tells you anything.
Jeb Bush, Mr. Tippy Toes Jeb Bush. Tippy Toes. That's what I like to call Jeb. You know why, don't you? It's because he was caught during the presidential primary on his toes while they're taking photos. He didn't think the cameras got him, and the field of 17 candidates, and he would wait. The cameras would die down, and then he would I don't know what the ballet, what pas de bourrée or whatever. He would basically bend his knees and then. Plie. Yeah, that's what he would do. Yeah, he would plie, and then he'd go up into what is that? Is that on your toes? I don't know. I can't remember. First position, second position. I don't know. But anyway, it's you go up on his toes. Even he was already taller than everybody else. He wanted to seem just that much more masculine. I'm this much more tall. This is the difference. You see, it's like from here to here. It's like I'm not president, but if I was just this much taller, I can be president. It's like now. It's like that Seinfeld joke. Now to now. What's the difference between silver and gold? It's like, well, it's like now to now. I love it. Anyway, so that's why we call them tippy toes. Hey, so let's talk about governing by task forces for a second. David Ferguson. David Ferguson is the former head of the Bureau of Legislative Research and has been involved in writing every bill, many bills, in the last 30 years. 32 years spent as the attorney or an attorney for the Arkansas legislature, and then eventually he was the head of the Bureau of Legislative Research. Now, this headline, how to identify whether a legislative task force has been created to stack the deck. how to identify whether a legislative task force has been created to stack the deck. Conduit for Action has written several articles criticizing 2 legislative task forces, sponsored by Senator Jim Hendren, at the behest of his uncle, Governor Asa Hutchinson. CFA looked at the guidelines placed on the 2 task forces and the membership of each, and saw they were both established to justify a particular outcome. One was established to continue Obamacare Medicaid expansion, and the other to delay legislation to reduce taxes and instead focus primarily on tax shifting from one taxpayer to another and broadening the tax base. More taxes. Reading the legislation setting up the 2 legislative task forces and looking at the membership of each shows CFA is correct in its assessment, but the issue is broader than just the 2 legislative task forces. Having worked for the legislature for several decades and having helped many legislators and the lobbyists they bring, keep that in mind for our 705 segment, the lobbyists they bring to write task force legislation. David Ferguson writes, I will give you a simple process so you can quickly determine whether a task force has been created to stack the deck in favor of a particular point of view. Simple identification process. To determine whether a legislative task force was created to achieve a particular result, use the following procedure. Step 1, ask the following question. Is it a legislative task force? If the answer is yes, then it was created to steer the result in a particular outcome, in favor of a particular outcome. And that's it in a nutshell. It's a simple one-step process. If it's a legislative task force, then of course it was created to steer to a particular outcome. In other words, all legislative task forces are created to achieve a particular outcome. Some are created to achieve a very specific result, such as recommending the continuation of Obamacare. Other legislative task forces on the lower profile issues have the goal of raising awareness of an issue and building support for a legislative solution, even if the exact solution hasn't been decided yet, such as raising support for victims of certain diseases or victims of acts of abuse. The legislative task forces that should be of concern to the public are those created on high-profile issues or on issues to help one segment of business or a profession. So here's a few things to keep in mind. Number 1, the creation of a legislative task force is intended to impress the uninformed public. Task force sounds important, brings to mind the origins of the term, the power of a naval task force. Yet, despite the fancy name, there's absolutely no difference between a legislative task force and a legislative committee. No difference other than the deck is stacked in the task force. Number 2, there is never a need to establish a legislative task force in order to conduct a thorough study of an issue. Never. The legislature already has a committee system that covers every subject the legislature may want or need to study. Number 3, anytime a legislative task force is created, it takes away important issues from the established subject matter committee. The legislature can create any study group it wants. It can give the group any name it wants. The question is whether legislators will continue to rubber stamp the use of the biased task farce strategy, or will they have the guts to say, no, take the issue to the subject matter committee that already has jurisdiction and already exists? I don't expect, David Ferguson writes, I don't expect any legislator to expend energy on stopping the bias of task forces, but that doesn't mean you have to believe their hype over new task forces. Let legislators know you don't buy the distractions and you know the deck is stacked. Now, digging deeper. The saying goes, laws are like sausages, better not to see them being made. David Ferguson writes, for over 3 decades, I helped legislators write their sausages, laws. During that time, I helped write legislation to create many legislative task forces. In every instance, the sausage making was always about stacking the deck to ensure the legislator, or, as usually the case, a lobbyist would have a friendly forum to get a favorable report and recommendations. The goals, limitations written into the task force legislation is one way of controlling the outcome. The goals or limitations keep legislators from coloring outside the lines and keeps the membership focused on areas that will bring about a favorable recommendation. The other way of controlling the outcome is to control who gets to make appointments to the task force. A primary goal of a task force is to create a friendlier membership than if the issue had been presented in the committee that would normally have jurisdiction. On one of the task forces I was assigned to write, he says, the legislator sent a lobbyist to my office to work on the details. I asked how the membership would be appointed. The lobbyist hadn't thought of that and asked to look at the committee membership lists. He went through the lists saying, this chairman is friendly. We want him on the task force. And we want him to make an appointment from his committee. We can't have this chairman involved at all because he opposes us. Ultimately, the size of the task force was decided by how many friends were needed to get favorable recommendations out of the task force. Stacking the deck is a normal part of setting up a task force. The saying goes, never give a sucker an even break. There is never a need to create a legislative task force, so be skeptical about why it's being created. The legislature has permanent subject matter committees, and together they have jurisdiction over every subject. If a legislator wants a specific subject studied, it's easy to get the appropriate committee to approve a study. Even if a legislator is not a member of the correct subject matter committee, he or she can file a study proposal with the legislative council, and the council will refer it to the appropriate committee. And it's very rare for a study proposal to be rejected. A study done by a committee can be just as in-depth and detailed as one done by a task force and can utilize just as many witnesses and experts as the task force without the inherent bias of a task force. In addition to the subject matter committee, there are two permanent legislative committees with the power to conduct studies in any area, the Legislative Council and the Joint Performance Review Committee. See, they covered all their bases already. This is about robbing standing committees of their authority. The act of creating a legislative task force always robs the established subject matter committee of authority by shifting important issues to the task force. In 2015 and 2016, the most important issue for the Public Health, Welfare, and Labor Committees of the House and Senate should have been whether Obamacare Medicaid expansion should be continued. Instead, the subject was taken away by a task force stacked to say yes to continuation of the program. In 2017 and 2018, the most important issue for the Revenue and Tax Committees of the House and the Senate should have been the comprehensive review of the Arkansas tax laws. Instead, the task force was created to focus on shifting of tax burdens among taxpayers. Sometimes the main goal of a task force is to take away a subject from a committee to avoid legislators who oppose the sponsor's desired outcome and give the subject to a friendly group. Committee chairs have not always been silent about their committees being robbed of authority. So many task forces were created in the decade of the 2000s that several committee chairs began to complain that their subjects were being taken away, that they were having difficulty scheduling committee meetings because they were competing for meeting dates with task forces, and that their assigned staff were distracted by also having staff task forces. To deal with the complaints, one solution tried by the House of Representatives was to try to impose meeting schedules that would assign days when committees could meet and when task forces could meet. Keep in mind there's a lot of per diem involved here when you do that. This is a fantastic article. We got to go to break, but it goes on, and David Ferguson does an excellent job here. Anyway, yeah, I'm sick of governing by task forces. I think the people of Arkansas are sick of it too, but the people of Arkansas got to know about it. And so tell your friends. Back in a minute.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world.
These delayed rotor lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody.
All right, folks, welcome back. It's kind of wrapping up the first hour here. If you haven't, if you missed most of it, I encourage you to go get it over at conduitnews.com. You get the podcast, SoundCloud, iTunes, the whole shebang. I encourage you to do that. Let's see here. When we come back, I'm going to dive into a guilty plea by Henry Hank Wilkins IV, former state representative. Going to dive into the specific schemes that are listed in that plea because it's quite interesting. It gives us more questions than answers for maybe other legislators, but I want you to understand the scheme that they were running as best we can. So stay tuned. We'll be back in 5.
Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Washington, D.C. In fact, we're exactly like Washington, D.C., because, and it's almost worse because less people know about it. Like you said, the sexy Fox News issues versus, knowing your city councilor, knowing your state rep or your state senator and what the issues are.
Yeah, look, I mean, we Texans excel at marketing. We have marketed our state better than anyone else. We are the conservative nirvana. We are the, take your favorite adjective and apply it to something good about conservatism, and that's what we in Texas say we are. And I would suggest that a lot of what we have done as Texans, we have marketed ourselves as this conservative, and in some ways we've kind of deceived ourselves into believing that we're this very conservative state. And yet, when you peel back just the veneer of the marketing brochure, we've got a lot of problems in our government, both the state and local levels. Texas has the 4th highest debt per capita in the nation. We have in the top 15% property tax burdens. So the idea that Texas is somehow doing things right and DC is doing things wrong is a misnomer, because they're both doing a lot of things wrong. They're just doing different things wrong, I guess. When I talk about where we are as Texans, we are often kind of like the guy who's the least drunk guy at the bar, but yet wants to be held up as a model of sobriety. Texans should not be content with simply being better off than California or looking better than Louisiana. I mean, I think Arkansas and Texas can both agree it's not hard to look better than Louisiana many days.
This is true.
I'm going to get my Cajun friends are going to be very upset with me. But that's how we end up talking about ourselves, and that's not right. We should be talking about ourselves in the way Mom said to talk about yourself. Are you doing the best you can do? Are you the best you can be? Those are the measures that we should be striving for, not just going to bed each night praying that Jerry Brown continues to drive California off the cliff. When we look at Washington, D.C., a lot of things that we're looking at there is how much is our congressional delegation working to free Texas from onerous regulations? How much are they working to let Texans govern Texas? That's kind of the we approach looking at the federal government, and then ask questions of our legislators. Hey, are you going to be able to govern Texas? When you don't have the excuse of the EPA and Obama IRS employees or whatever the excuse du jour is, are you going to man up and do what you promised to do when you were campaigning? That becomes the tension.
Yeah, it's encouraging that we have other states that are having the same problems that we're having. I want to ask you, though, about people moving to Texas and not changing their voting habits. They're moving to Texas because it's prosperous, okay? We have this a little bit in northwest Arkansas. We have Bentonville, which is the global headquarters for Walmart, and so it attracts a lot of people from a lot of areas who have, quite frankly, maybe more liberal, bigger government tendencies, and you can kind of start to see things change there. And so I'm wondering what your thoughts are on people moving to Texas, because it is more prosperous than maybe northern states, but are they going to realize why the states they left, or because they were voting for people who just wanted more and more government?
Yeah, so I put on my cheating reading glasses here because I literally just printed off a report this morning from the Dallas Federal Reserve, and it's actually a pretty fascinating report called "Gone to Texas: Migration Vital to Growth in the Lone Star State." I was trying to find a chart that had a little bit of what you're pointing to, but can't find it fast enough. But when we're looking at the inflow, what we're finding is probably half of the people who are moving here get it. They understand that they left California. They were.
Oh, so we got a freeze. I think we've lost a connection with Michael a little bit. let's say, I don't know if we can get him back or not. It may kind of come back here in just a moment, Michael. So if you can still hear us, if you'll just hang back, and we'll let you finish your.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
My suspicions are that the corruption in the state of Arkansas goes further than many of us want to imagine. Welcome. This is hour number 2. You've found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're diving into the guilty plea of Henry Wilkins IV. He pled guilty, I guess what was it, probably about a month ago at this point. Reading from the indictment, they kind of go over certain entities, and you got to kind of follow. Entity 1, Person 1, Senator A, Senator B. And, you know, we can make reasonable guesses, but these indictments kind of read, the only person they really mention are going to be the person pleading guilty, who is Hank Wilkins. So he will be further known in the plea as Wilkins. Okay, he's a former state representative. Okay, he represented House District 17 in the Arkansas House of Representatives from 1991 to 2001, and again from 2011 to 2015. Wilkins also served as a senator representing District 5 in the Arkansas Senate, 2001 to 2011. This would be before the redistricting and where they changed the names, the numbers of the district. So he's senator, he's a state rep, and he's a senator. Both House District 17 and Senate District 5 are located in the Eastern District of Arkansas. Wilkins also served as a pastor of St. James United Methodist Church. That is key. So if you see SJUMC again, that means St. James United Methodist Church, located in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Then they go over this interesting portion. Entity A. Entity A was a Missouri-based nonprofit corporation that provided a variety of services to individuals in Missouri, Arkansas, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Illinois, including mental and behavioral health treatment and counseling, substance abuse treatment. So Entity A, it is safe to assume, considering preferred family health care is the subject of a trial, and Rusty Cranford and everything else by there. Rusty Cranford's the lobbyist. He has been September. I think his trial's been pushed back until September. So if that's Entity A, is preferred family health care, it's safe to assume. Serving as an executive director, Entity A. Person 1. Okay, Person 1 was an employee of Entity A, serving as an executive overseeing Entity A's operations in the state of Arkansas. Person 1 was also a registered lobbyist in the state of Arkansas and operated lobbying firms B, C, and D. In 2013 and 2014, the lobbying firms operated by Person 1 represented and were paid by, among other clients, the Behavioral Health Providers Association of Arkansas, Arkansas Youth Services Provider, CHMS Provider, Association of Arkansas, Entity A, and Entity F to advance their interest in the legislature. So it is safe to assume that Entity A is preferred family health care, and Person 1 is Rusty Cranford. This is not rocket science here, folks. We were not born yesterday. So you see how these pleas or indictments, this is how it works. Then they list Eddie Wayne Cooper Eddie Wayne Cooper was an Arkansas state representative from 2006 through 2011 and a lobbyist registered with the Arkansas Secretary of State from January 20, 2011 onward. On April 20th, 2009, Entity A hired Cooper as a full-time employee with the job title of Regional Director. Cooper's employment with Entity A ended on April 26, 2017. From October 2009 through May 2015, Cooper was also a member of Entity A's Board of Directors. Cooper also worked for lobbying firm B as a lobbyist and received payments from lobbying firm B as a contract employee. Lobbying firm B was an Arkansas C Corporation and lobbying organization registered with the Secretary of State. Lobbying firm B was solely owned and operated by person number 1, Rusty Cranford, and purported to provide political services including lobbying, consulting, and advocacy. On or about January 30th, 2008, person 1 opened a bank account ending in 2316 Bank Course South. So they go through all of this stuff. This is a big deal down here, though. The last sentence, from July 1st, 2013 to December 31st, 2014, Entity A paid lobbying firm B in excess of $1 million. From 2012 through 2013, Entity F paid lobbying firm B in excess of $60,000. Lobbying firm C was a lobbying organization registered with the Arkansas Secretary of State, which listed a family member of person 1, again, Rusty Cranford, as its authorized representative. On or about November 4th, 2009, person 1 opened a bank account, and see, it keeps going here, and they just kind of set up these relationships. So, Entity E was an Arkansas nonprofit corporation incorporated by person number 2 in 1991, which provided training, mental health, substance abuse assessments, and anger management for youth related from the Division of Youth Services. Entity E was located in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, which is in the Eastern District of Arkansas. Entity F was a nonprofit corporation located in Magnolia, which was a provider of youth services to delinquent and at-risk youth. Person 3 served as the executive director of Entity F and caused Entity F to make payments to lobbying firm B and lobbying firm D between January 2012 and July 2013. Entity F paid lobbying firm B more than $60,000. Can you go to the Arkansas Times article real quick? Yeah. This headline from Benjamin Hardy back on May 2nd. Youth Services nonprofit referenced in Wilkins' bribery plea hired Senators Michael Lamoureux and Jeremy Hutchinson, scroll up, I got to read the rest of that title, to do legal work, former director says. Just want to point that out. Back to the guilty plea here. The most interesting part of this guilty plea has to do with how they were running these schemes. Okay? At the bottom of page 7, on or about November 2nd, 2010, Wilkins won the general election as a representative in the Arkansas House of Representatives. Wilkins was reelected to the Arkansas House on or about November 6, 2012. While in the Arkansas House, Wilkins served during the 89th General Assembly. Senator A served as a senator in the Arkansas Senate from 2011 to the present. Prior to his service in the Arkansas Senate, Senator A served as a representative in the Arkansas House from 2000 until 2007. Now, the Arkansas Times says that this appears to be Senator A, Senator Jeremy Hutchinson. Senator B also served as a senator in the Arkansas Senate during the 89th General Assembly. Senator B is thought to be Senator Cheatham. Go to the member profile there, Joe. Show everybody who he is. Senator Eddie Cheatham, Democrat. This is who Senator B is. We know this because later on they reference specific piece of legislation belonging to Senator B, and it's not hard to connect those dots. So here's where it gets very interesting to me. Oh, my good grief. Hang on. This whole thing is interesting. This whole thing is interesting. Sticking with page 8. Sticking with page 8, Joe. On or about September 27th, let's keep going. I guess second paragraph there. From in or about 2010 through in or about 2014, the Eastern District of Arkansas and elsewhere, the defendant, Henry Wilkins, together with Person 1, Rusty Cranford, Person 5, and others, did knowingly and unlawfully conspire, confederate, and agree together, and with each other, to corruptly give, offer, and agree to give anything of value to any person intended to influence and reward Wilkins as an agent of the state of Arkansas in connection with a business transaction and series of transactions in the state of Arkansas involving $5,000 or more in violation of 18 U.S.C. 666A2 for Wilkins, an agent of the state of Arkansas, to corruptly solicit and demand for the benefit of any person and accept and agree to accept anything of value from any person intending to be influenced and rewarded in connection with a business transaction and series of transactions. I know this is kind of routine stuff here. I just wanted you to hear this. Wilkins accepted cash from Person 1 and checks from Entity A, lobbying firm B, lobbying firm C, lobbying firm D, and others, deposited into the discretionary account in exchange for providing and agreeing to provide favorable official action for Person 1, Entity A, and Entity F, and others. The funds in the discretionary account were used at Wilkins' direction and discretion. Person 1 directly and through lobbying firm B, now again, Person 1, Rusty Cranford, lobbying firm C, lobbying firm D, and Entity A, and Person number 5, through Entity A, enriched themselves by providing and directing monies to Wilkins through the discretionary account in exchange for Wilkins taking and agreeing to take official action to benefit Person 1, Entity A, and Entity F, and others. Person 1 paid Wilkins cash on at least 3 occasions, including one occasion where Person 1 placed an envelope with $5,000 into Wilkins' vehicle. 2 additional cash payments totaling $5,000 were made by Person 1 to Wilkins near the Arkansas State Capitol building. The Marble Palace. Person 5 paid Wilkins by directing monies in the form of at least one check in the amount of $30,000 from Entity A that was deposited into Wilkins' church's discretionary account. Person 1 would provide monies to Wilkins around times when Person 1 wanted Wilkins to perform official acts that were favorable to Person 1. Entity A, Preferred Family Health Care, and Entity F, and others. Person 1 described and explained the official acts Person 1 wanted Wilkins to perform in favor of Entity A and Entity F in exchange for the monies being paid to Wilkins, including through conversations in person and by telephone. From February 2013 to December 2013 alone, Person number 1 contacted or attempted to contact Wilkins by telephone approximately 344 times. In return for the cash and check payments, Wilkins performed and agreed to perform official acts in his capacity as an Arkansas legislator that were favorable to Person 1, Entity A, Entity F, and others. Wilkins used the funds deposited into the discretionary account of the St. James United Methodist Church by Person 1, Entity A, lobbying firm B, C, D, and others for his personal benefit. In furtherance of the conspiracy and to accomplish its purposes, Wilkins, Person 1, Person 3, Person 4, Person 5, Entity A, lobbying firm B, C, D, Entity F, and others committed acts in the Eastern District of Arkansas and elsewhere, including the following payments deposited into the discretionary account of the St. James United Methodist Church by checks. They list them there. And here is where the scheme gets specific. How did they do this? Well, there's several instances of how they did this. Let's start with House Bill 1328. Person number 1, on behalf of lobbying firms B, C, and D, represented youth services providers around the state of Arkansas during the 89th General Assembly and, among other things, lobbied to prevent the Arkansas Department of Youth Services from adopting new rules and regulations deemed burdensome by the youth services providers and which were not contained in the original contracts between DYS, Department of Youth Services, and youth service providers. Specifically in late 2012 and throughout 2013, Person 1, Rusty Cranford, in furtherance of his lobbying on behalf of youth services providers, including Entity F, formulated legislation that would require the state to appear before legislative committees prior to changing youth service provider contracts. Don't want to mess with anyone's contracts, do we? That bill would later become Act 321 of 2013. On or about August 9th, 2012, an employee with the Bureau of Legislative Research emailed Wilkins with the subject line, draft bill. You see why they wanted these emails, folks? You see why the FBI wanted these emails? The subject line, draft bill, DYS and community-based providers. And advised that he or she had a lengthy conversation with Person 1, lobbyist. Remember what David Ferguson wrote over at Conduit for Action? How the lobbyists sit in with the Bureau of Legislative Research people. Had a lengthy conversation with Person 1, lobbyist, about the issues youth service providers are having with DYS. And as a result of my conversation with Person 1 and the conversation we, meaning he, she, and Wilkins, had on Tuesday, I have prepared the attached bill draft. Attached to this email was draft legislation that would later be filed as HB 1328. On or about August 13, 2012, Wilkins forwarded the draft bill to Person 1, who then forwarded it to Person 3 at Entity F. On or about January 16, 2013, Person 1 forwarded the draft bill to Person 4 and Cooper, stating, "Here's a copy of our legislation. We have Wilkins as the lead sponsor in the House." On or about January 19th, Person 1 wrote to Senator A, Jeremy Hutchinson, stating, "Hello, my friend. Coop and I could use some help with you co-sponsoring this bill. Coop and I worked to bring DYS before the legislature before they can make any changes to providers' contract and services. We would like you to co-sponsor the bill for us. Things has not gotten any better with DYS working with the providers." On or about February 13th, Wilkins filed House Bill 1328. The bill was entitled "An Act to Require DYS to Appear Before the Legislature for Any Changes to Youth Provider Contracts," on or about February 19, 2013. HB 1328 was amended to add co-sponsors. Goes on here, and it says here that HB 1328 was favorable to the interests of the youth services providers, including Entity F, and thereby advanced the interest of Person 1, who was paid to lobby on their behalf. In exchange for the bribe payments from Person 1, lobbying firm B, lobbying firm C, and lobbying firm D, Wilkins agreed to advance the interests of the clients of those lobbying entities through his bill, or through this bill. Then we have the next scheme. HB 2227. On or about February 13th, an employee of BLR emailed Person 1 with a copy to Senator A, Jeremy Hutchinson, and Wilkins, stating that Person 1 attached are the shell bills you requested on behalf of Senator A and Wilkins. On behalf of Hutchinson and Wilkins, they have not been run for introduction yet. Once hear from the member, they will be run. Shell bill is a term. They say what a shell bill is. We know what a shell bill is. Very general. They fill it in later. On or about February 13th, Senator A, again, Senator Hutchinson, wrote, quote, "Please run for introduction. I'm not sure where we should start the bill, House or Senate. Person 1, any thoughts?" On or about March 5th, 2013, Person 1 wrote the employee of BLR with copy to Wilkins and Senator A asking, "Can you tell me if this bill has been run for introduction? And the bill number, please. I can't find it anywhere. It hasn't been ran yet. Please hold off. We will have additional language tomorrow. Thank you so much, Person 1. On or about March 7th, 2013, at 8:51 a.m., Person 1 emailed employee with the BLR, Senator A, Jeremy Hutchinson, and Wilkins, stating, "Here is the language for the shell bill. Will you please add this and prepare it for filing? Thank you very much. Attached to this email was a scan originating from an administrative office of Entity A. The title of the attached bill was An Act to Avoid Unnecessary Expansion of Costs and Services under the Child Health Management Services Program. Of course it was. An act to avoid costs, because we've got to sound like, of course we want to keep costs under control. On or about March 7th, 2013, the BLR employee replied, of course. And they go on. They go back and forth. Please find the revised shell bill attached. Now listen to what they say. What was the scheme here? They say, on or about April 4th, 2013, HB 2227 passed the Arkansas State Senate and eventually became Act 1017 on April 8, 2013. HB 2227 was favorable to the interests of Person 1, Lobbying Firm B, Lobbying Firm C, D, Entity A, and F, in exchange for the bribe payments from Person 1, Lobbying B, C, D. Wilkins agreed to advance the interests of the clients of those lobbying entities through this bill. Now, the question that I have is, there's a lot of money going around. Were the rest of the people involved doing this pro bono? That's my question. We got to take a break. Back in a minute.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
And they get into this next part. We're going over the guilty plea of Hank Wilkins in depth. I know it's not the most sexy thing in the world, but you have to bear with me. This is serious stuff. This is how things work down at the Marble Palace. And you just got to wonder if there's any other duplicative actions like this going on. Eventually, it starts to talk about the General Improvement Fund scheme down on page 12. Now, this is what's interesting. This is what's interesting. This is where we know who Senator B is. On or about March 25th, 2013, SB 507 passed the Arkansas Senate. On or about April 2nd, SB 507 passed Arkansas House, with Wilkins voting in favor. On or about April 6th, SB 507 was enacted as Act 818. Act 818 appropriated up to $1 million from the General Improvement Fund to DHS DBHS for behavioral health services to citizens of the state of Arkansas for the fiscal year ending on June 30th, 2014. On or about April 22nd, 2013, Wilkins voted in favor of the House bill, which provided funding for the General Improvement Fund appropriation legislation that had been approved previously, including $365,000 in funding. On or about April 23, 2013, Wilkins voted in favor of Senate Bill 364, which provided funding for GIF appropriation legislation that had been approved previously. On or about July 1, 2013, Person 4, the adult of Person 1, the adult child of Person 1, was hired as a lobbyist for the nonprofit Entity F, and was to be paid $60,000 a year. Entity F concluded their financial relationship with lobbying firm B on July 26, 2013, and instead employed Person 4 as their lobbyist. This hire was an indirect benefit to Person 1, who had been supporting Person 4. This lobbying activity was not disclosed to the United States government on Entity F's IRS Form 990 as required by law. In or about September 13, Wilkins spoke to Person 2, a representative entity E, and discussed with him the opportunity to apply for GIF funds under Act 818, meaning voted the money, then you start applying for the grants, you get the money, then you can send it wherever you want. I mean, it is a money laundering scheme, to say the least. Thought there, but fascinating interview, folks. It's Empower Texans. That's the organization, EmpowerTexans.com. The reason we wanted to highlight and have Mr. Sullivan on is, and these we've had other people on from other states that are involved in similar work that Conduit is involved in. And so when you see these Republican politicians get upset, you hear in most all of these states that we talk to, what they do is they try to go after donors. We've
People
had the
from California or New York.
Are we back? Are we back? Okay, Michael, can you hear me? We lost you in mid-sentence talking about.
Then you lost me at probably the right time to lose me.
No, okay. Well, so we'll kind of wrap things up here, and I apologize, but just what would you say to the grassroots out there in Arkansas who can get kind of discouraged because of the lack of change, and people have been voting for conservatism for a long time in Arkansas, it seems now, and yet we keep getting excuses as to why limited government can't work. What would you say to all those folks out there listening?
Well, first, buck up. It's not as bad as it could be. Two, that should be your excuse to being more engaged. Just because things haven't changed yet, just because things have been fixed yet, doesn't mean they're not going to be. We didn't get into our problems overnight, and we're not going to get out of them overnight. We have to be committed as conservatives to the long game. We have to be my parents' generation, the flower children, down with the struggle or whatever. We have to do likewise. We have to be willing to keep fighting, to keep pressing on. Texas needs a strong Arkansas. Arkansas needs a strong Texas. The competition there. We shouldn't be in a race to the bottom. We should be in a race to see who can, have the greatest expression of self-governance, who can have the greatest amounts of liberty. None of us should think of ourselves as living on islands. We can steal best practices from each other. I think what Conduit for Action is doing is, my team and I've been reading up on all the stuff you guys have been doing. And there are things y'all are doing that we need to import, and and vice versa. But that's where we need to develop that community, that sense of we're all in this fight together. The other side does that. The other side has that esprit de corps. And that's why I think that we sometimes feel like they're winning and we're not. In fact, we've got the truth on our side. We're not called to be successful. We're called to be faithful. And I would suggest to you that there is no better political cause to be faithful to than the cause of liberty and
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yeah, so welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. And this sound right here means, yes, there it is. Okay, so that sound means that it is time for our newest Conservative Future segment, where we interview young conservatives, and we kind of find out, what's on their minds. Please welcome to the program. For the first time, we have Alice Norman is on the line. Alice, welcome to the program.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So the way these work, we just really want to know, there's not a lot of people who are young who end up being conservative. Winston Churchill said, I think, if you're young and liberal, you don't have a heart or something, but if you're old and not conservative, you don't have a brain. I might have messed that up, but you know what I'm saying. In the college world, the college campuses, it's just not very popular. It doesn't seem to be a conservative. So, Alice, I'm just curious, how did you develop a conservative worldview?
Well, first of all, I think a lot of a lot of people who are drawn to liberalism, being young, feel like it's all about good intentions. And I feel like I'm more of a pragmatist. I like solutions that work. And I think I've always been conservative. But, I mean, just growing up and seeing different things in Mississippi, internationally, for example, I did a study abroad in Mexico that was really eye-opening for me. I think it just confirmed these solutions I saw anyways.
So you grew up in Mississippi, and you're out of college now, right? Where'd you go to school?
Well, I just graduated this month from the University of Mississippi. I graduated with degrees in public policy and marketing communications.
Awesome, that's fantastic. So, let me ask you this: was a conservative worldview welcome at Ole Miss? Or was there, like you said, just a lot of people who just really get hung up maybe on the rhetoric of good intentions, but not the outcome of what those policies produce?
Well, surprisingly, I feel like the University of Mississippi, which has historically been conservative, is really charged right now. These last 4 years, I remember, I mean, every class, even down to, like, my geology classes, my basic, just get out of the way classes, we always talked politics, and I felt like a lot of my peers and a lot of my professors were very left-leaning, and to express openly conservative views, you're almost discouraged from it. You have to use discretion when discussing what you believe.
Yeah, I mean, did you ever think that maybe, you're going to get a bad grade or something like that?
Well, particularly with my major in public policy, going into the major, it's a small group. So I think my graduating class was about 50 people in that major. And we all sort of collaborated and knew which teachers leaned what way. And we figured out pretty quickly that writing our papers, with discretion towards those views would get us a better grade, which, coming out of high school was a big surprise to me.
Yeah. That's a shame too. I mean, I had a similar experience when I was in college and I took a history class. I mean, and you'd have thought if you said one negative thing at all about FDR that conflicted what the teacher thought about FDR. I mean, and I just learned really quick. Well, I've just got to take the test and get out of here, because it's just you have to make those calculating decisions. We're talking again with Alice Norman. She's on our Young Conservative segment or Conservative Future segment. So, Alice, what do you think about the state of politics today in the country? What's the state of conservatism or republicanism or limited government? Like, what are your general thoughts? What are some issues that are important to you?
Well, for me personally, I believe that individual rights outweigh collective rights at any given point, and I feel like, overall, Republican and Democrat, this has shifted to just taking more and more rights and applying it to policies that sound conservative or liberal. But really, it should be about preserving individual rights for people. And I feel like that's disappearing from the rhetoric, and more, like, the conversation is moving away from that.
Yeah, it certainly is moving away from that. I mean, we have examples of, and I love what you said. You said it sounds conservative, and we've got examples of that here locally in Arkansas. Where there's this attempt to make what they're doing sound conservative, but if you actually dive into the policy, it's the opposite, and it, in many cases, it just goes completely against the platform that many of these people claim that they believe in and support.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's just frustrating. So back to you being a young. Are you 21, 22? Is that how old you are?
I am newly 21.
Okay, nearly 21. Well, I mean, I know there's a lot of young people who are engaged on the left. There's not as many of young people your age who are engaged on the right. Have you encountered any, like, Trump derangement syndrome is what they're calling it now? I mean, I've talked to people who are my age that have, like, Donald Trump getting elected has ruined their lives in some cases, and I don't get it. But, I mean, did you encounter any of that, and does that produce, like, an apathy, or does that make people, like, double down even more?
Well, absolutely, especially, like, in the context of just coming out of the university. I remember the day he was elected, I had peers going to my professors talking about how, it was the end of the world and there was going to be a revolution and all these things. And I mean, it was just totally obscene and crazy. And I feel like in some departments, specifically, I remember the sociology department and the honors college, which I was involved in, there would be like signs on our professors' doors about, all of Trump's lies, or this would be a safe space to come and, be free of all political conversations and whatever else. And it just seemed like totally far-fetched and ridiculous to me.
Yeah. Freedom of speech, though, like, that doesn't really exist anymore on college and a lot of college campuses, right? I mean, and that's a disturbing trend. You mentioned safe spaces or this right to not be offended. It's like, wow. I mean, these universities are now really the opposite of what classical liberalism was all about. And you used to could find classical liberalism in our universities, like the concept of freedom of speech and being a counterculture. Now they don't even want to debate. They want to shut down speech. That's disturbing to me. Is it disturbing to you?
Oh, absolutely. And it's definitely one-sided, too. It's not like the university is promoting just this objective, free, safe space for everyone to come and, just have, a shared set of facts. It's definitely one-sided, leaning left. So I remember, for example, I can't remember which group it was. I think it was Turning Point USA, tried to set up a student-led table during elections week. And there's tons of tables out there for, Green Week and whatever else. And the professors came out, and even though the Turning Point or conservative table or whatever it was had the same paperwork as every other table, they were asked to leave repeatedly and told they couldn't be there. And to me, that just seems, it is really unfair and one-sided.
Yeah, I mean, what it is open discrimination. I'm wondering if, me and Joe talk about this all the time in the disputes that I have with Republicans, like we can't agree on the definition of words and phrases anymore. And I think that's a huge problem, a communication problem. But I think over on college campuses, it's almost like they're either the ends justify the means to them. So they think because they're discriminated against or victimized just because, and then that somehow gives them the right to discriminate against others. But I would say they're not being discriminated against. Like the whole concept of the First Amendment and Western civilization is being able to discuss and debate ideas and do it in a civil manner and not try to silence and shut down. And that's what's so scary to me, Alice, is, it used to be, we used to love our freedom of speech in this country, and now we have, and young people used to be the biggest proponents of it. They were the ones that were exercising via protest and everything else. And it's like, if these are our future leaders, obviously I'm excluding you because you're a conservative, but if our future leaders are okay, and they're in college campuses now, and they're okay with just not allowing the other side to speak, we really need to be praying for our country, because if those people get into power, they will use the government like a third world dictator would. That they're the real fascists because they don't believe in the freedom of speech.
Absolutely. And I also think, adding on to that liberalism indoctrinates people to believe they're dependent on circumstances, that they're victims of what life brings them. And I think that's a different operating assumption than what conservatives operate on, which is, that opportunity is possible for everyone, that everyone has a chance to do something meaningful and incredible with their lives if they just put in enough hard work. And I think that's where, young people come off thinking that they need to be protected from words, especially if they're left-leaning.
Yeah, and that's extremely frustrating to be protected from words. And so, I think at this point, it's politically incorrect to say the sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That is no longer a thing. There's some people, Alice, I'm sure you've heard it, they think that words are terrorism. They feel like it's a form of terrorism or a form of violence against them if you say words to them that they don't like. And it's like, no, that's not the definition of violence. Again, we can't agree on the most basic concepts. All right, so let me ask you this, Alice. Kind of wrapping things up here, but did you think were you surprised that President Trump won? I was surprised. I was surprised he got out of the primary. As a talk radio host, it was a very confusing time for me. I'll be perfectly honest. I was very confused. I was questioning. But just tell me what you thought. Like when Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton, what was going through your head?
Well, to me, it actually wasn't that surprising, only because I'm, from the coast of Mississippi, and I had seen him speak in Biloxi, and had seen the way that people reacted to the way he spoke. And coming out of a marketing major, I took a lot of design classes. And one thing we learn in design is that for every movement, there is a counter movement. And I think prior to Trump, a lot of people had just become really frustrated with the direction that things were going. And I think Trump getting elected was a counter movement to everything that happened during those years, a swing back in the other direction. So to me, it just seemed like the natural course of things.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that makes a ton of sense. We're gonna leave things there. Alice Norman, for our Conservative Future segment. I really appreciate you being on the program, and I'd love to do it again sometime soon.
Thanks so much, Paul.
All righty, folks. That concludes things. We're gonna take a break here, reset. I kind of want to dive back into some of these this Hank Wilkins plea deal, because we didn't get through it all. We didn't get through it all. And if you know somebody that wants to be on our Conservative Future segment, I would just encourage you to please tell them to text us or give us a phone call. Talk to Joe. We'll talk to you. We'll schedule it 870-275-9799. That's it for our Conservative Future.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Money, power, prestige, essence, available now from aristocrats serving Arkansas.
from the Nata Rhino collection. The fragrance of backroom deals. Nepotism. The aroma of higher taxes. Subliminal deception. Deep state. Ace. Made right here in Arkansas by a taxpayer-funded Chinese factory. Every bottle carefully crafted for you. Gender neutral. Nothing says aristocrat like Essence of Bureaucrat. Essence of Bureaucrat by Asa.
Available now in the Marble Palace gift shop.
Paul Harrell parody. Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Going over this guilty plea. Hank Wilkins' guilty plea. Going over some of the events that took place and what he pled guilty to, getting all of this money. Picking up at the bottom of page 12, Joe. We're doing this, folks, because it's in your interest to know. I know most of you are not going to read this thing. It's abundantly clear, because when I was reading it, it's kind of boring. But on or about October 18th of 2013, person one, it's largely believed to be Rusty Cranford, who's going to on trial in September up in Missouri. And this is the same Rusty Cranford that, according to reports, tried to have a guy killed, a witness murdered in New Jersey. On or about October 18, 2013, person 1 sent an email to, amongst other individuals, person 5, stating that Act 818 is from Senator B. Senator B is Senator Eddie Cheatham. Senator Wilkins' money, but Senator B's bill. So Senator Wilkins' money, but Senator B's bill. It is for Entity A, Preferred Family Health Care, for $150,000. This is Senator B's bill, but Wilkins' money. On or about October 29, 2013, person 2, on behalf of Entity E, applied for $100,000 in general improvement funds, available under Act 818. On or about October 31st, Wilkins sent a letter of support on behalf of Entity E to receive Act 818 GIF funds. On or about October 31st, Wilkins sent a letter of support on behalf of Entity A to receive Act 818 funds. On or about October 31st, 2013, Wilkins sent a letter of support on behalf of Entity F to receive Act 818 funds. On or about November 1st, 2013, person 3, on behalf of Entity F, applied for a $99,895.67 grant, available under Act 818. On or about November 1st, 2013, person 1, on behalf of Entity A, applied for $200,000 in GIF funds, available under Act 818. On or about December 5th, 2013, the DBHS made disbursements from the funds appropriated by Act 818 to select grant applications. From those funds, Entity A, Preferred Family Health Care, was granted $122,564.93. Entity E was granted $61,000. Entity F, $61,000. Between December 23rd and December 31st, 2013, Wilkins wrote checks to himself from the discretionary account for over $7,000 and paid approximately $10,602 towards the balance of his personal Discover credit card. Wilkins accepted payments from person 1, entity A, lobbying firm B, C, and D. In exchange, Wilkins performed and agreed to perform official acts in his capacity as an Arkansas legislator that were favorable to person 1, person 5, entity A, entity F, including but not limited to using his official position as an Arkansas legislator to vote for the passage of legislation appropriating GIF monies to DBHS, and then using his official position to influence the awarding of GIF grants to entity A and entity F. Wilkins, together with person 1, person 5, and others, did take steps and committed acts to conceal the conspiracy. Such acts included, but were not limited to, the issuance of bribe payments to the discretionary account to the St. James United Methodist Church that was under Wilkins' control instead of Wilkins directly. It was an attempt to launder the money. Additionally, in or about 2014, person 1 contacted Wilkins and requested to meet with Wilkins. This is Rusty Cranford, contacted Wilkins. Wilkins agreed to meet with person 1. During the meeting between person 1 and Wilkins in or about 2014, person number 1 informed Wilkins that person number 1 was being investigated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and that person 1 had sought advice from attorneys in Kansas City. Person number 1, again, Rusty Cranford, stated to Wilkins that person number 1 needed to continue making the payments to Wilkins' discretionary fund even after Wilkins left the Arkansas legislature. Person number 1 stated to Wilkins words to the effect that person 1 needed to do this to make it look like I was paying you. To make it look like I wasn't paying you. Wilkins left the legislature at the end of the Arkansas 89th General Assembly, which records indicate was in session until July 2014. Wilkins was replaced in office as the House Representative of Arkansas District 17 in January 2015. Person 1 continued to direct payments to Wilkins' discretionary account from August 1st, 2014 until at least January 20th, 2016, even after Wilkins left office to conceal the true nature of the bribes previously paid to Wilkins. In or about February 20th, 2015, in response to questions from auditors asking what the December 13th, 2014 payment from Entity A to Wilkins' discretionary account was for, person 5 stated it was a donation to a youth summer camp program in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, United Methodist Church. That's about it, end quote. I wanted you to read that part because when people find out they're under federal investigation, they tend to attempt to try to cover their tracks. This is an example of that. What apparently is Rusty Cranford, again, who's going on trial up in Missouri later in September if they don't push the trial back again. He goes to Wilkins and he says, hey, I'm under federal investigation. I need to keep paying you to make it look legitimate. Or, I mean, you could say that. Maybe Rusty Cranford really believed that. I need to keep paying you to make you look legitimate, to make the payments look legitimate. Or, I need to keep bribing you so you don't go talk to the feds. Guess what? Hank Wilkins has pled guilty. I'm figuring he's talking to the feds about everything he knows. And you notice in these schemes, whether it's the GIF scheme or whether the plea details these bills where they got money, they passed HB 2227, and they figured out a way to enrich themselves. They passed HB 1328 and figured out a way to enrich themselves. Am I missing another one? They passed HB 2209, figured out a way to enrich themselves. Then they passed SB 507, which became Act 818, to figure out a way to enrich themselves. I mean, and in each one of these cases, they say that it's, person 1, entity A, Hank Wilkins, all these people and others committed a conspiracy and others tried to enrich themselves. The question is, who else was getting a taste? Who else was getting a kickback? That's what I want to know. I don't think it was just Hank Wilkins. I think Hank Wilkins has pled guilty for a reason here, and I want to know more. The taxpayers deserve to know more. I'm sick of not being able to actually talk about conservative policy because right now we're just needing to demand for honest government because these folks, the people, I'm telling you, The Marble Palace is worse off than many of us would like to imagine. Here at Conduit News, we're going to keep shining the light of truth on the corruption because it's got to stop. We can never permanently end it because of the human condition, which is why we must demand the government be as limited as possible in size and scope and responsibility. Arkansas, be safe. We'll see you tomorrow. Johnny Cash Friday.